Thank you all for joining us for today's SQL Server Series webcast, Improving Data Quality with DQS, presented by Mark Jelinek. My name is Amy Nelson, and I'm the Marketing Coordinator for Nudesic and the moderator for today's webcast. This webcast is presented by Mark Jelinek, Nudesic's Principal Consultant of the Service Delivery Group. We are very excited to have him present for us this morning. Today's webcast is part of our SQL Server Series. We will be hosting the next webcast, delivering a semantic model for ad hoc reporting on June 21st. We will be sending out more information about this webcast along with today's webcast recording. If you are all logged on, you should all be able to see the title slide that states Nudesic. There was a brief intro earlier regarding features with live meeting. To briefly recap, we encourage you to ask questions throughout the session by typing them in. To ask a question, click on the Q&A verbiage located on the toolbar on the top left side of your screen. Type your question, then click the Ask button. Please note that all questions will be held until the end. We will also be using the seating chart featured within Live Meeting. Changing your feedback color within this tool provides feedback to the presenter. To provide feedback, click on the Feedback menu found in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. Select your feedback color. Your seat in the conference center will display your selected color. Lastly, this webcast is being recorded and will be available via the Nudesic website. We will email you when the link is available. If everyone is ready, please make sure your seat color is green. If you are all dialed in, please make sure your mic is muted, and at this time, I'd like to turn our presentation over to Mark.
Thank you, Amy. How are you today? Can everyone hear me?
Sounds good, Mark.
All right, great. I wanted to thank you guys for taking time out of your day, especially the people on the East Coast and in the Central Time Zone, sharing your lunch with me, and in California and Mountain Time, sharing your morning with me. I'm just going to bring up the slide deck, and there we go. And what we're going to be talking about today is data quality services, which ships new with SQL Server 2012. As Amy had mentioned, I'm a principal consultant with Nudesic. Prior to Nudesic, I was with several companies, Ernst & Young, MLB Network, and Microsoft. And I've been working with SQL Server since version 6.0 and pretty much every version since, working not only with the relational engine, but analysis services, integration services, and reporting services. What we're going to be talking about today is just an introduction to data quality services, getting a clear understanding of the problem. We're going to go through a demo to show you some of the features of the product, and then I'm going to give you a ton of pointers to go from here. This is building on the SQL Server Series presentation, Master Data Services in SQL Server 2012, which was presented by Patrick Gallucci. You're going to receive a copy of the slides, so don't worry about writing down all the URLs. I did include them in the deck, and you'll be receiving those within a day or so. This is also building on content that was presented at the PASS Master Data Management and Data Quality Services virtual chapter. And if you'd like more information, I've included the URL for that organization as well. That is co-chaired by our Patrick Gallucci as well as Tom Merrick. You guys have a very deep passion for business intelligence. They are both Nudesic employees, but we're looking to extend the reach out to the community as a whole. This presentation is based on demos from the SQL Server 2012 Developers Update. Having been doing this as long as I have, one of the things that's always kind of gotten to me a little bit is you see a great demo and you want to know how it works and you're never quite sure how to rebuild it. So at the end of the presentation there will be links to all of the content, and we will be emailing out the directions on how to rebuild these demos so that you can use them on your workstations or within your environment. So what is the data quality problem space? Having worked with relational databases, OLTP, OLAP, BI, data warehouses, data marts, the core struggles tend to be around structuring the data, loading the data, getting this to perform, and then after you do all of that work, you find out that, well, some of the data is just wrong. And how do we address that issue? There are 5 dimensions that we really want to pay attention to when we talk about data quality. And the first is standardization, the second is completeness, accurateness, validity, and uniqueness. So with standardization, sometimes we take a look at things and we think it's a simple problem, and it turns out to be a bit more complex than we realized. For example, with a gender code, you may figure that there's really only two values, M for male and F for female, or U for unknown. I recently came across a data set that was based from a company in California where they actually had 7 distinct values for gender that were necessary for regulatory compliance within the state of California. I don't know how they come up with 5 extra genders, but in reading through it, it was kind of an interesting set of problems. And how do we do those mappings? Is our data complete? And of course, the two things that are brought out here is 50% of zip codes are 5 nines, or 20% of customers' last names are blank. Is the data accurate? So these are things that tend to be knowledge that exists within the organization, but may not necessarily exist within the systems that we're working on. For example, a supplier within a system may be listed as active, but our customer service reps or our purchasing people know that that vendor went out of business 6 years ago. And how do we capture that information? And then, of course, uniqueness. So John Ryan and Jack Ryan both appear in the system, but are they in fact the same person? And I kind of have a personal story to tell on that. We'll get into that in a slide going forward. You know, validity, salary value should be between this and that. And I've always found this to be an interesting problem because, well, there are CEOs that do have an annual salary of $1, and then on the opposite side of the spectrum have very, very large salaries. So how do we determine what is valid data and what is not? Where do we raise a red flag, and how do we handle it once a red flag has been raised? So to personalize this problem a little bit, my name is Mark Jelinek. Mark is a fairly common first name within North America and Western Europe, but I have a somewhat unusual spelling in that the usual spelling is M-A-R-K. M-A-R-C is not uncommon, but it is the exception. Some of the misspellings that I've dealt with throughout my life, M-A-R-K, M-A-R-C-K, M-A-R-C-H, never really sure where that's come from, but I've run into it a couple of times. And then my last name is not a common name within North America or Western Europe, and I'll see things like dropping one of the L's, adding a C. Somehow the last letter in my last name seems to get translated to R, and I was never really able to figure that out until somebody pointed out to me that when I write my name on a form, sometimes the K can look a little bit like an R. And then just to revisit 3rd grade, which seems to go on eternally, the Jelinek, which actually I have seen a couple of times. Now, when I'm dealing with someone in a business context, whether an employer, a customer, the bank that holds my mortgage, the cable company that I pay monthly, and I have these financial relationships that extend over a long period of time, I kind of want them to get my name right. And it becomes a slight customer service issue, not a major issue, but still an issue when they get my name wrong. Because when I'm calling these companies, it's generally not to tell them that everything is wonderful, but that there's an issue that needs to be resolved, and then to have yet another issue where they can't find my customer service records, they can't find my financial records, they can't find my account information because of a misspelling of my name. Well, I get even more annoyed. And you see that one simple misspelling can lead to data explosion. So out of these 4 first names and 7 last names, only one combination is correct. Only a few of them are half correct, but most of them are just dead wrong. Now, what does this mean to me as a business intelligence or data warehousing professional? Well, what it means is I've now got data explosion within my customer dimension or my person dimension. If I've got data across all of these misspellings and the systems are set to do matching on a first and last name, even though I am one person, I'm really one of any 28 people. So while one system may have transactions against the correct spelling of my name, another system may have transactions against those spellings of my names. What does this mean to me as an IT person? It means that my data now is not as correct as I'd like it to be, And as a business person, the decisions that I'm basing this data on may not necessarily be as accurate as I'd like them to be. So if I'm taking a look at average revenue per customer, average profit per customer, or any of the counts of customers, just a raw count or by geography, income, gender, education level, or by product bought, these numbers are going to be skewed because the denominator, the number of customers, is going to be inflated. When that happens, my average revenue for customer appears lower than it should be, or my profit appears lower than it should be. So in every data warehousing or business intelligence presentation I've ever seen, you've got your obligatory truisms. These are the things that we all accept as the truth. For example, garbage in, garbage out. If your data is not correct, then your reporting can't be correct. If you're basing decisions on faulty data, you're going to make some interesting decisions. And the management truism of you can't manage what you can't measure, if you have inaccurate measurements, you're going to lead to some interesting management challenges. How do we help reduce the impact of these issues? Well, first thing we can do is we can cleanse our data. We can have a facility for matching data. We can profile our data to gain insight into our data. And then we can monitor the process that's managing all of these. So cleansing is an interesting term to me because it not only implies taking wrong data and making it right, but it also includes enrichment, taking some data and then enriching it with data from other sources. And we'll get into that in just a little bit. Matching is the process of identifying, linking, or merging relating entries within or across sets of data. So taking those 27 misspellings of my name and merging them into the correct spelling of my name and having that single customer or person entity that can be leveraged across systems. We can profile our data, so analysis of the data source to provide insight into the quality of the data. If you have 28 people living at the same address, that would be an indicator that perhaps something is not as it should be. And then, of course, monitoring the process. Has the cleansing run? What issues were discovered? Are there common threads that we need to pay more attention to? So SQL Server Data Quality Services is a knowledge-driven solution that enables IT pros, and here's my favorite part, and data stewards to easily improve the quality of their data. What this means to me is that the business people begin to get involved in the data quality discussion. They have the tools available to them to help cleanse the data. Not only does that take work off of my plate, but it's actually in their benefit. One of the things that I will generally discuss with my customers is the fact that I will never know their business as well as they do. So if I'm in purchasing or I'm creating a purchasing data warehouse, I'm never going to know the vendors as well as the purchasing people do. I will never know the products or the processes as well as the people that do it day in and day out. So I want to be able to leverage their knowledge and not take over their jobs. What's important here also is DQS is an on-premise data quality product, and it is extensible with knowledge from multiple parties through the Azure Data Mart. There are companies out there that for years have provided data sets for validation. Companies like Dun & Bradstreet, Thomson Reuters, Dow Jones, etc. And one of the things that I've always thought was very cool about working with Microsoft is taking somewhat exotic technologies and making them available to the masses. And Microsoft has taken this and made this available to everybody by including data quality services in SQL Server 2012 Enterprise and Business Intelligence editions. How does data quality services really work? What are the key concepts? The first central concept is a data quality knowledge base, or a knowledge base, or a KB. And this is the container that holds all of the information about the data, about the matching sets, and the processes at large. When you create data domains, you are capturing the semantics of your data. And what we mean by semantics is you can simply point at a column in a table or in an Excel spreadsheet and say, this is a social security number, and be done with it. You don't have to go into the technological minutia that would go along with, say, creating a column within a table or creating an ETL process. The domain takes care of all of that for you. Once we have a data domain and we're going to create entities within that domain, we need to discover the knowledge. And this is how we would load data into data quality services. And the more data that we acquire, the more knowledge we're able to use. This is open and extensible, again, referring back to the web services that will provide data into data quality services. And very, very important, if it's not easy to use, the business users are not going to use it. And we're going to see how these are hosted in Silverlight-based web pages and in add-ins that snap into Excel 2010. Sorry about that. So overall, what does the architecture look like? So starting on the top left, we have our data quality services user interfaces. This is where we would do our knowledge discovery and management. We can create data quality projects and do some data exploration. Other clients also include a SQL Server data quality component where you can have your data quality services processes as part of your ETL within SSIS, which I think is amazing. We're not going to be touching that in the demo today, though. And then a master data services Excel add-in, making most of the functionality available to clients directly within Excel. Along the top and the sides, we'll see how we can have categorized data services, reference data, our domain store, and third-party reference data and reference data sets. And this is how we can build up our knowledge base, either with internal or externally sourced data. Our data quality server is effectively based on a set of APIs and then a set of capabilities that are built within the engine. Our knowledge discovery, profiling, exploration, cleansing, matching, and the collection of reference data. And all of this data are stored within SQL Server databases, which I'll show you as part of the demo. One of the things I would like to point out in this is as we build, either through cloud services, reference data, and enterprise data, this becomes a cycle. I've dealt with a lot of projects where someone comes in and say, oh, okay, we'll take care of data quality, or we'll be a data steward for the length of the project. This is an ongoing process that has to be maintained throughout the life of the application. You're going to continually discover and explore data, manage knowledge, correct, standardize, match, and deduplicate. So having someone from IT and the business involved in these processes is going to be key to the long-term success. You're going to get out of it what you put into it. If you don't continually invest in it, you're not going to really, your data is going to get stale. But overall, what you want to also keep an eye on is monitoring the process over time. So monitoring your status, progress, and notifications. And one of the cool things you can do with notifications is actually feed that directly into your ETL processing. I'll show you that when we get into the demo. So our basic definitions, our knowledge base stores all the knowledge related to a specific type of source data, and it's a container for the data domains. The domain is a semantic representation of the type of data in a field or a column, so a person, a reseller, a state, a zip code, etc. You can not only set in here trusted values, values that are desirable and that we want to pass through, but also invalid values and erroneous data that can be automatically corrected. So at this point, once we discover something that is continually invalid, we can remap that to another value and move forward and not have to deal with it a second, a third, a fifth time. The synonym associations, when we talked about, Jack Ryan versus John Ryan, setting up Jack and John as synonyms, term relationships, validation rules, business rules, and matching policies. And the matching policies is something that we're going to see used in the demo. And then the matching rule is the set of rules and conditions that determine what is a match or a duplicate. So the four components of data quality services are the data quality server, the client, the cleansing component within SQL Server Integration Services, and the data quality processes within Master Data Management. Master Data Management and data quality services do not rely on each other, but they do cooperate quite well. Within the data quality server, you're going to see three databases. You're going to see DQS main, and you're going to see DQS projects and DQS staging. DQS main stores the stored procedures, the engine itself, and the published knowledge bases, where projects is really used for metadata around knowledge base management and data quality project activities. The staging area is exactly what it sounds like. It's an intermediate staging area where source data is going to be copied, processed, and it's transient. It's not going to hang out there very long. The data quality client is a standalone application which is designed for both data stewards and DQS administrators. And when I read DQS stewards, I read end users. End users or business users. This is one of the tools that they can use to manage the data quality services processes that are within their scope of knowledge. This is going to help you perform your knowledge management, create your data quality projects, and do your administration all within a single user interface. It does allow for domain management, matching policy creation, data cleansing, matching, profiling, monitoring, and server administration. And what's very cool about this is it can be installed on a remote computer. Nobody needs to have access to the server that it's running on. You can just install it on your local workstation. What I really like about this is I'm not trying to install a technical tool on an end user or business user's workstation. I'm not deploying SQL Server Management Studio, Business Intelligence Development Studio, Report Builder, things that are going to be intimidating to the end user and require a ton of training for them to use correctly. This is an end user focused tool and is accessible to the end users. Data cleansing component of SSIS, well, all of this just happens within an SSIS package. So one alternative is to run your data cleansing projects within the data quality services client application if you remember to. If you make this as part of your regular ETL data loads, then you don't have to worry about someone forgetting to do it. It then becomes part of a professionally managed process, still leveraging the knowledge bases, still leveraging the matching rules, still getting all of the richness of data quality services and master data management, but implemented in a schedulable, monitorable way. And then, of course, the data quality processes within a master data services. We're going to see that used for deduplication and loading as part of the demo. And that's all done through Microsoft Excel. So not, again, putting in an intimidating high overhead tool that the end user is going to have to be trained on. This is something that's going to be very familiar to them and very easy for them to work with. So let's fire up the demos. All right, Amy, are you able to see the screen?
Give it just a second. It's loading. All right, we see your desktop.
Good deal. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a master data model, a master data management model, use Excel to create and load entities. We're going to explore the master data, add and update members, and then create a subscription view, and your ETL guys are really going to like this. And then after that, we're going to start loading data after it's been deduplicated. So the first thing I want to do is I want to create a model, and that is done through master data management. So I'm going to go into system administration, and I apologize for the slowness of this. This is running within a VM within my workstation, and we're going to call this AdventureWorks BI because that's the database we're going to be working with. Now we're not going to create an entity with the model. We'll take care of that in just a minute. and save it. Now, the reason why we had to do this within Master Data Manager is you're not able to create a model within Excel, but you are able to work with models within Excel. So we're going to load the file. And what we're doing here is we have now a list of resellers. This is known good data, and we are going to load this into Master Data Services. So how would we do this? Well, we just go to the Master Data Services tab, and we're going to connect to an instance of Master Data Services. Now, I already had a connection set up, but let's say that I didn't. All I have to do is connect, manage connections, create a new connection. All it asks me for is a description and an MDS server address. This is not, we don't have to create complex connection strings. We don't have to go through a lot of technological administrivia. This is something where we can give a note to the help desk and they'll be able to help the end users connect. So now you'll see the Master Data Explorer window over here, and we have the AdventureWorks BI model that I just created. What you'll see here is that this is versioned, so you can work with multiple versions of the knowledge base and of the model. So we're going to point out that there are now two worksheets that we're working with, and we're going to use them to create an entity. So within the build model group, create our entity. The range that we're working with is columns A through F. We're working with the AdventureWorks BI model. Now, considering I'm connected with a model, I kind of hope that this would be filled in, but unfortunately it's not. Our entity now is a reseller, and you'll notice that we have a reseller column within the spreadsheet. The column that contains a unique identifier, though, is a reseller ID, and what contains the name is actually the reseller column. We just click OK. It's creating the reseller entity, and when that's complete, over in the Master Data Explorer, the screen's going to go nuts for a second. And we now have the reseller entity over in Master Data Explorer. What you see here looks an awful lot like an Excel table. With some extra metadata. One of the things that I did want to point out, though, is that this is created within a new sheet. Now, the sheet just contains the table that represents the data. It doesn't actually contain it. The data is actually stored up in the Master Data Management Server. Now, I'm going to just go down to the last row because one of the things I wanted to point out is that Honolulu is not in Oregon. So we're going to take a look at correcting that in just a minute. First thing I want to do, though, is I want to take a look at the attributes. And the attribute name is state, and the attribute type is text, but I don't want it to be text. I really want this to select from a constrained list. Now we're going to create a new entity that would provide that list. And what you'll see again is in the Master Data Explorer window, that state entity will be created. What I also want to point out now is you'll have the TX, which is the name, and then in curly braces is the code. So how do we get this to actually spell out Texas for TX, and how do we get this to do the other states? Again, I'm going to just delete this spreadsheet because it doesn't contain the data, it just represents it, so we're not actually losing anything. So I want to kind of dig into these entities now. Again, selecting the model, just double-clicking on it. Can't really double-click to resize columns. But you'll see again the difference between the name and the code. Now they are both currently the same, but I'd like to expand these out a little bit. And we've cheated because we have these all spelled out. So all I have to do is just copy these here. Paste them into here. And what you'll notice now is the color has changed. It's now this kind of salmon orange, ugly color. Now in row 38, I want to add Hawaii because we have to correct Honolulu not being in Oregon. So I'm just going to type in Hawaii. Only has 2 I's. And you'll see not only is the name column orange, but also the code. So what do I want to do now? Well, what I'd really like to do is I'd like to publish this back to master data. So all I have to do is click on Publish. You'll notice that you have the opportunity to create an annotation for the change. The annotation is basically just notes saying, I made these changes for this particular reason. I can use the same annotation for all changes, or I can make them on an individual basis. I publish it. It sends it up. And here's an interesting one. I did add Hawaii. It validated, and it's in there. But now I've got this additional row that says error. Well, not really sure why that happens, but I know it's not a big deal. So now that we've updated the data within Master Data Management, I can delete that. So I'm going to switch over to Master Data Manager and just go back to the main page. I'm going to explore this data. What you'll notice is really so far there hasn't been anything that's been too intimidating for an end user. Okay, this is interesting. Oh, it helps if I select the right model. And there we go. So far we've got a grid on the left. We've got a form on the right. So far nothing that should be too scary for your end users. And I'm going to go all the way to the end and take a look at World of Bikes. And now rather than changing it within the spreadsheet, I can just say, you know what, this really belongs in Hawaii. And I'm going to click OK. You know what, I can even add an annotation. I should have done that before I clicked OK. I can view any annotations that are associated with this entity. And what you'll see here is that it was created. You have the username, the timestamp, each of the values, and each of the reasons why it was changed. So now for some fun stuff, something that's going to really appeal to the data warehousing guys. Integration management. You know what I'd like to do? I'd like to take this master data and expose it as a view. So my subscription view name, call it reseller. And it's based on my AdventureWorks BI model, version 1. And the entity is a reseller. Format is going to be leaf members. There's no hierarchies, so leaf member would be fine. And then I'm going to save it. So what does this do for me? Well, let's go to our master data services database. And our views. And we now have a view there, MDM reseller. So let's do a query here. And what we'll see is not only the enriched data that's kind of pertinent to master data services, but the name. We've got version flags. We've got unique IDs. Unique IDs, wait a minute. That could be a surrogate key. We've got all of our attributes, address, city, state. We've got surrogate keys also for the individual states, zip codes, enter date and time, the user that did it. So I've got a measure of data lineage. Wow, this is pretty much everything that I would need to, say, build a dimension table and have it be unique and have it be validated and have the data be administered by the business user, which kind of makes me happy. So let's jump back out of here a second. So now what we've done is we've been able to load data into master data services, allow the end user to correct it through an end user accessible tool. Now we're going to have some more data coming in, and I'm not entirely sure it's all new data. So how would I deal with this? Well, first thing I want to do is I want to create a simple view in SQL Server that will expose the data that I'm interested in. This is something that would have to be done by a DBA. So within AdventureWorks, just want to make sure the view isn't here already. Nope. Before I jump into that, just an interesting thing, and it's an aside. You don't need to know this. It's just, if you're like me, you like to know how things work. Where'd you go? Master data management, views. Well, there's nothing stopping us from seeing how this view was created. So we'll script view as create to. I do find it interesting that this was marked as with encryption, but then commented out. So I guess Microsoft doesn't tend to let us know how all of this was modeled. Or if you're a little more comfortable with a graphical view, understanding how each of the tables or virtual tables within master data services work together to create this view. But again, just an aside, you don't need to know any of this to be productive. I just like digging into things. So let's create a quick view on We're going to create a quick view on the AdventureWorks database. One thing, if you notice, I'm using the AdventureWorks 2012 database. If you download the demos from Microsoft, from one of the links that I'm going to show you towards the end, that was kind of built against AdventureWorks 2008 R2. There are some minor differences that need to be kind of addressed. The text file that will be sent out will go through what I had to do in order to get all of these demos working. But what this is going to do is this is going to create a view which gives us a list, the customer IDs, names, addresses, cities, states, and zip codes from the various tables within the AdventureWorks database. And we're going to use that in just a second. So that happened successfully. Now for the first time, we're actually going to be dealing with data quality services. So we're going to load up the data quality services client. This is an end user tool, can be used by administrators, very easy to deploy, very easy to manage. The one thing to note is the data quality services instance must be installed on the same server as master data services. Don't know why that is a limitation, I just know that it is. So in the administration, we're going to go into configuration. We're going to go into the general settings tab, and what is most important for us here is the matching and the minimum record score. This is where you would set the tolerances for a match. This is a global setting, so you can't have it at 100% for one thing and 40% for another. So when you do set this tolerance, make sure that it is reasonable for everything that is going to be running on that instance of the data quality services server. You'll see why we picked 50% in just a little bit once we get a little deeper in. Now, the other thing that we have to be aware of is that this is secure. So what we've got to do is make sure that we have the proper security principles created within the source database. So we've got two logins here, #MS DQS service login, that is created when DQS is installed, as well as #MS DQS DB owner login. And what we are going to do is create a user for each of those within the AdventureWorks 2012 database, and we are going to grant control rights and control and authenticate rights to them within the database. I'm a big fan of the principle of least privilege. I do not know if these are the least privileges that would be required. I believe they need to be able to read the databases. Control seems a bit excessive to me, but I haven't had a chance to look into it to really kind of knock that down a bit. So we've created the users. We've given them the security rights that they require. And we're going to go back to the data quality client. So first thing I want to do is create a new knowledge base. This is what's going to be our container for all of the information that we need. And it is going to be called AdventureWorks BI. We're not going to create this from anything, but what we are going to do is we are going to discover knowledge. And this is basically loading it up with data. So where are we going to load the data from? Well, we can load this from SQL Server, or we can load it directly from an Excel file. In this case, we're going to load it from SQL Server, our AdventureWorks 2012 database, and the view that we just created, which was VUS store address list. Now we're going to start doing some mappings. First thing we're going to do is we're going to select state. Now we don't have any domains here that we're mapping this to, so we're going to create a new domain named state. I am nothing if not original. And we're going to do the same thing. Oh no, state standalone. So let's start discovering. So what's going on is DQS is retrieving the data from the selected view and discovering the values. From a database perspective, I would take a look at this and I would say it's doing a select distinct. Now we can manage the values. And what we can see is also a frequency analysis. So Alabama's in there 4 times, Missouri is in there 11, Oregon's in there 17. Now, let's say that I know that there's some data in there, and we want to kind of head it off at the pass. So the first thing I want to do is add a new domain value and Calif for California. Now, I know this is wrong, so I'm going to mark it as an error, and I want to correct it to CA. So whenever I got data coming in that's Calif, it will automatically be remapped over to California, or just CA. And you can actually see this visually. There we go. So underneath CA, you'll see Calif, which corrects back to CA. And this is really data accumulation and discovery. So as we accumulate more data, you'll notice that, well, there's a couple of states that just aren't there. Being from New Jersey, I always notice that New Jersey's missing. So if I wanted to add more, I would simply create a new domain value and load it up, or I'd be able to load that up from an Excel spreadsheet. We're kind of finished here. Now, I don't want to publish the knowledge base quite yet because we're not quite done, so I'm just going to say no, and it'll retain all the information that we just put in. So we're going to go back to knowledge base management, and we're going to select the AdventureWorks BI knowledge base, and we're going to set up a matching policy. And this is where we set up the things that we need in order to determine what is a duplicate. Again, we're working with the AdventureWorks 2012 database and the view that was created earlier. In our mappings, we're just going to select store. And we don't have a domain for store, so we're just going to have to create one. And we can call the domain the same value as the column. We're going to do the same thing for address. For city. And for zip. Now you notice that as you create these, our domains are here and available. There's no reason why we can't reuse them for other entities. As you build these up and as you accumulate this knowledge, it's reusable going forward. So this is the base data that we're going to be matching against. We're going to create a new rule. Now what we're going to be looking for are duplicate stores. You notice that everything that we're dealing with is either a store or a reseller within the AdventureWorks BI database, but there's no reason why this also wouldn't work with customers, products, etc., etc. So now it's all just grid-based. We're going to add a new domain element. Oh wow, the more I click it, it just automatically fills it in one after the other. Now here's one thing that's going to annoy everybody. This is a fixed size. You can't expand it. You can't stretch it out. You can't make it larger. It is what it is. So you have to be very careful when you're creating these things. You got to kind of know what you want to do, because doing it visually is not always easy. So what I'm going to say here is store is going to be weighted 50%, and I'm looking for similarity, not necessarily exact matches. The same thing on address. I'll weight that 50%. Now with city, I want that to be exact, and it is a prerequisite. And now we have set up our base data, and we have set up the rules that would determine a match. We click next, and we're good. So now we can publish. Well, why did we just do all of this? What was the point? Point is I've got new data that's got to go in, and I want to make sure that it is not a duplicate. And because I'm an end user, I want to do this from within Excel. So I now have 10 rows of data. Maybe it's a duplicate, maybe it's not. All I know is I want it loaded. So the first thing I want to do is connect to my master data services. It's there, my AdventureWorks model. We're looking at version 1. I see my reseller entity. I see my state. So I'm going to double click on the reseller entity. Sorry, you really ought to do this within a new sheet. And there's all my data. Well, that really doesn't get me very far. So what I want to do is I want to combine the two sets of data. So I click on Combine Data. And what is the data that I want to combine with MDA? This is the data. And so what maps to a name? Whoops. Start that one again. Combine data, new reseller. Oh, name is reseller. Now we don't have a code, but that's okay. We don't have to. Address maps to address, city to city, zip to zip, and state to state. Combine. Now what I want to point out is you now have a new column here that says source. And the data that was sourced from MDS will be noted that way. Oh, there's that ugly orange color again. And now we've got external. And this does not mean external to Excel or external to anything other than external to master data services. Now I want to check out my duplicates. So let's go back up here and let's match data. And my knowledge base is already pre-filled out for me. The worksheet column is name. All of my mappings are correct. Click on OK. Let it do its thing. And what it's doing now is it's going through and it's evaluating each of them. But remember those tolerances that we said earlier. 50% equals a row match. The weighting is 50% on name, 50% on address, and city and zip have to be exact matches. Well, it just did a whole bunch of interesting things, didn't it? First thing interesting it did was it created a cluster ID, and a cluster ID identifies duplicates. So if I take a look at these two, which is 14099, that's one set of dupes. This is another set of dupes, etc., etc. So we still have our name, we still have our code. So let's filter out everything that's not a match. So we'll get rid of all the blanks just to make it a little bit easier to see. And what I want to do now is I want to show the details. And the details that I'm most interested in are my score. Now what I can see here is this is an exact match. Name, address, city, and zip. All exactly the same. 94, well, we've got minor differences in the address where it's avenue instead of Ave. Right here, Ohms Road instead of Ohms RD. Now this is interesting. the address is exact, the city is exact, and the zip is exact, but the names are completely different. So the question starts to be, is this two different businesses that are sharing the same address? For example, did Atypical Bike Shop close and be replaced by Ride and Go Bike Supplies? You know, as an IT person, I don't feel comfortable answering this question. This is something that really ought to be answered by a business user, perhaps someone in purchasing or shipping who has a relationship with these bike stores. So what I want to do, get rid of this as a filter. Really only want to see my external stuff. And I want to start assigning IDs. Oh, I apologize, missed a step. Because these are duplicates, I just want to get rid of them. So get that back in here. Get rid of my blanks. And, well, this is external, but it's a duplicate, so I'm going to get rid of it. Same for this one. Same for this. Same for this. Delete. There we go. So no delete statements, no where clauses, really nothing more than what any user would do every day with Excel. So we're going to filter this now for external only and get this back to where it needs to be. And see, this is the one part that I am kind of uncomfortable assigning to an end user, and that's assigning them codes. But once it's there, all I've got to do is click on Publish. Set my annotations, new data load, click on Publish. It's all validated, it's all there. We've got our codes. And at this point, the data has been uploaded into Master Data Services and Data Quality Services, all without much interaction with IT, mainly driven by the business users. I thought it was kind of cool. So what I'm going to do is go back to our slides. Now, like I said, one of the things that I've always enjoyed about going to see a very cool demo is trying it at home and understanding what I'm doing. So what I've done is I've put together a list of websites that I use in order to put this all together. The most important one out there is the SQL Server 2012 update for Developer Training Kit Web Installer. What this will do is it will give you a web installer on your desktop. You can double click on it. It'll give you a catalog of all of the demos that are available. Just be warned, it defaults to selecting all of them. So what I did was I first unselected all of them and then selected one at a time the things that I wanted. Also be careful about installing the prerequisites. It was originally designed to work with SQL Server 2012 RC0. That can get a little wonky. Just when you go to install it, it will ask you if you want to install prerequisites. I definitely suggest installing either SQL Server 2012 Evaluation Edition or SQL Server 2012 Express Edition. although Express Edition probably won't have the data quality and master data management. So, well, there you go. Or you can use your MSDN subscription to download the production bits. One of the other things that I just wanted to remind everybody of is this is not the only webcast that NewDesk is doing. We've got a number of webcasts coming up over the next couple of months, driving innovation with SAP, delivering semantic models, exploring new Hadoop. That's one actually I want to sit in on. Amerishore, an innovative socially conscious approach to offshoring, data integration, and EDI. So please check those out. Also, you can see the webcasts on the NewDesk website, especially Patrick Gallucci's that he did the 1st of May. All very cool stuff. And thank you so much for your time. I know I just went a couple of minutes over, but I appreciate you all hanging in with me.
Great. Thank you, Mark, for this awesome presentation. If anyone has any questions, please go ahead and type them in at this time. In the meantime, I'm going to click through a few polling questions, and we greatly appreciate your feedback. The first question, was this content helpful for your business, yes or no? Great, thank you. The next question, please rate the presentation content, excellent, good, or poor. Great. And the last question I have is, would you like us to schedule a follow-up, yes or no? Again, thank you everyone for joining us. We will be forwarding the link to view a recording of this webcast once it does become available. You are now free to disconnect. Thank you all.